6 months after the Vrelnathi fled Earth, the galaxy changed forever. Commander Vrel stood before the Vrelnathi Supreme Council, preparing to deliver the most humiliating report in their empire's history. The council chamber was vast, filled with representatives from all 4 species that comprised their empire. Thousands of eyes watched him from the galleries above. "Begin your report," the High Counselor commanded. Vrel took a breath. The Earth operation failed. We lost 70% of our invasion force. We were forced to retreat. Shocked silence filled the chamber. 4,000 years without a single defeat, and now this. The counselors whispered among themselves, their voices rising in disbelief and anger. "Explain," the High Counselor demanded. "How did primitives defeat us?" "They're not primitives," Vrel said. "That was our first mistake. Yes, they lack faster-than-light travel, but their weapons development, tactical innovation, and adaptive capabilities exceed anything we've encountered. They reverse-engineered our technology in weeks. They weaponized their own planet's environment against us. They infiltrated our computer systems and turned our own machines against us." "Impossible," a counselor protested. "No species has ever done such things." "Earth did," Vrel said flatly. "And because we underestimated them, thousands of our soldiers are dead. Furthermore, they demanded reparations and the release of all enslaved species. I agreed to their terms to save what remained of our fleet." The chamber erupted in chaos. Counselors shouted accusations. Some called Vrel a coward. Others demanded he be executed for failure. But Admiral Kreeth stood beside him and spoke with authority. "I was there. I saw everything. Commander Vrel made the right decision. If we had stayed, humans would have destroyed our entire fleet. They were building warships using our technology combined with their innovations. They were preparing to attack us in orbit. We barely escaped with our lives." The High Counselor raised a hand for silence. "This information will spread across the galaxy. Other species will hear about our defeat. Our empire will be questioned, possibly attacked. We must decide how to respond." "We cannot respond," Kreeth said. "Not militarily. Earth is too dangerous. Any attack on them would result in massive casualties. My recommendation is simple. Avoid human space entirely. Mark their system as restricted territory. Warn all Vrelnathi vessels to stay away." The council debated for hours. Finally, they reached a decision. Earth would be left alone. The Vrelnathi would release their slaves and pay the demanded reparations, not out of honor but out of fear. And they would broadcast a warning to the galaxy. "Let all species know," the High Counselor announced, "that the 3rd planet of the Sol system is inhabited by a dangerous species. Approach at your own risk." The news spread through the galaxy at the speed of light. Within weeks, every spacefaring civilization heard about Earth. Reactions varied wildly. Some species rejoiced. The Kalari, enslaved by the Vrelnathi for 200 years, heard the news and immediately rebelled. Their uprising succeeded. The Vrelnathi, demoralized and weakened, couldn't suppress it. Within months, the Kalari were free. Other enslaved species followed. The Torvin, the Yashik, the Plenari. One by one, they rose against their Vrelnathi masters. The empire that had ruled for millennia crumbled in just 5 years. Other spacefaring species reacted with curiosity. Humans seemed impossibly dangerous, but also interesting. Several civilizations sent diplomatic probes toward Earth, carrying messages of peace. They wanted to meet these terrifying humans, but carefully, respectfully. 1 year after the invasion, Earth received its first peaceful contact. The Kalari sent a delegation. Their ship appeared at the edge of the solar system, broadcasting a simple message: "We come in peace. We mean no harm. We wish to thank the humans who freed us." Yunji led the diplomatic team that greeted them. The meeting took place on the moon, at humanity's newly constructed lunar base. When the Kalari representatives emerged from their ship, they looked small and fragile, nothing like the imposing Vrelnathi. Through translators, they told their story. 200 years of slavery, forced labor in alien mines, families separated, hope lost, until they heard about Earth. "You didn't just defeat the Vrelnathi," the Kalari ambassador said. "You inspired us. If humans could resist, maybe we could too. We rebelled because of you. We're free because of you." Yunji felt tears in her eyes. "We fought for ourselves, but we're glad it helped others. Tell us, what do you need? How can we help?" The Kalari didn't want weapons or money. They wanted knowledge. Human technology, human tactics, human stubbornness. They wanted to learn how to stay free. Earth agreed. Over the following months, the Kalari and humanity exchanged information. The Kalari taught humans about faster-than-light travel, which they'd learned from the Vrelnathi. Humans taught them about guerrilla warfare, cyber attacks, and adaptive manufacturing. It was the beginning of something new. An alliance based on mutual respect and shared experience. Not an empire, but a friendship. More species came. The Torvan, who brought advanced medical technology in exchange for Earth's biological research. The Ashik, who shared agricultural techniques that could feed billions. The Plenari, who offered mathematical knowledge that accelerated human science by decades. But not all contact was peaceful. Some species saw Earth as a threat that needed to be eliminated before humans became too powerful. Small raids occurred. Pirates seeking to capture human technology. Military scouts testing Earth's defenses. They all failed. Jin Wu, now leading Earth's orbital defense forces, repelled every attack. Human ships patrolled the solar system constantly. The Tagukki was joined by 50 more warships within 2 years. Any hostile force that entered human space was met with overwhelming firepower. "We don't start fights," Jin Wu told his crews. "But we always finish them." Su Bin continued improving human spacecraft. Each new generation was faster, stronger, more advanced. She combined alien technology from multiple species with human innovation. Her ships became the most feared vessels in nearby space. Wu Jin commanded humanity's first deep space exploration mission. His fleet of 5 ships traveled to nearby star systems, mapping trade routes and establishing peaceful contact with friendly species. They carried a simple message: humanity seeks friends, not slaves or masters. Taeyang's cyber warfare division monitored galactic communications networks. He created an early warning system that detected any hostile fleet gathering near Earth. Several times his warnings allowed humanity to prepare defenses before attacks arrived. Enemy fleets found Earth ready for them and quickly retreated. Hae-Jin established the first interspecies medical research facility. Doctors from a dozen different worlds worked together, sharing knowledge about biology and disease. Her original work on weaponizing bacteria became research on curing diseases instead. She developed vaccines that saved millions of lives across multiple species. Sangmin's factories produced goods for peaceful trade, spaceships, medical equipment, communication devices. Earth became known for high-quality products. Human manufacturing was fast, efficient, and innovative. Other species bought Earth products eagerly. Hyun-Sik coordinated the planetary defense network, which grew to include not just Earth but friendly alien worlds. When pirate fleets attacked Kalari colonies, human ships arrived to help. When the Torvan faced a rogue AI uprising, human cyber warfare experts solved the problem. Earth became protectors of weaker species. Mina founded the Galactic Translation Institute. Humans spoke hundreds of languages naturally, which gave them an advantage in learning alien speech. Mina's translators worked on every human diplomatic mission, facilitating communication between species that had never talked before. Daeho returned to cargo shipping, but now he transported goods between star systems. His routes connected Earth with a dozen alien worlds. He became wealthy, but more importantly, he became a bridge between civilizations. 5 years after the invasion, the Vrelnathi Empire collapsed completely. The species that comprised it went their separate ways. Some sought peace with humanity. Others avoided humans entirely, still afraid. Commander Vrel retired in disgrace. But privately, he felt relief. He'd survived Earth. Many of his colleagues hadn't. And he'd learned something valuable that day when he'd first seen humans fight back. Never underestimate anyone, especially not humans. 10 years after first contact, Earth joined the galactic community as a full member. Not as the newest or weakest member, but as a respected power. The human delegation arrived at the Galactic Council on a ship designed and built entirely by humans. A beautiful fusion of technology from 20 different species, improved and perfected by human engineering. Yoon-ji, now elderly but still sharp, represented Earth at the ceremony. She stood before thousands of alien representatives and spoke the words that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. "We come from a small blue planet, third from our sun. When we first met other species, they came as conquerors. They thought we were weak. They learned otherwise. But we didn't let that experience make us bitter or isolate us. We chose to reach out, to build bridges, to protect those who needed protection. We are human. We fight when we must. We help when we can. and we never ever give up. The council chamber erupted in approval. Not everyone liked humans, some still feared them, but everyone respected them. The council chamber was silent except for the quiet clicking of mandibles. High Counselor Velthus stood at the center of the room, his insectoid body trembling slightly. Around him, representatives from 40 species waited for his words. They all knew why they were here. They all knew what was coming. 17 systems, Velthus said, his voice translated through the chamber systems. 17 worlds destroyed in 3 months. The Ravagers show no signs of stopping. A ripple of fear moved through the assembled delegates. The Quilnari ambassador, her blue skin pale with worry, spoke up. Our defense fleets cannot hold them. Every battle ends the same way. We lose. They consume everything, added the Mexorian representative, his crystalline form flickering with distress. Populations, resources, even the orbital stations. Nothing remains. Velthus looked around the chamber. He had led the Galactic Council for 20 years. He had settled disputes, negotiated treaties, and brought peace to dozens of conflicts. But this was different. The Ravagers did not negotiate. They did not want peace. They only wanted to feed. We must consider all options, Velthus said carefully. He knew what he was about to suggest would cause controversy, even the difficult ones. In the back of the chamber, Ambassador Kang Day sat quietly. The human representative had been listening without speaking for the past hour. That was his way. Humans had joined the Galactic Council only 20 years ago, and they still kept mostly to themselves. Their presence made many species uncomfortable. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world. The highest classification, a planet where everything seemed designed to kill its inhabitants. Extreme weather, deadly predators, toxic plants, and diseases that could wipe out entire populations. Yet somehow humans had not only survived but thrived. The humans, someone whispered. Others began to murmur. Velthus raised his primary appendages for silence. Yes, I believe we must ask Earth for assistance. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species feared humans almost as much as they feared the Ravagers. Stories circulated through the galaxy about human capabilities. They could survive injuries that would kill any other species. They could go without sleep for days. They could adapt to almost any environment. They had something called an adrenaline response that made them stronger and faster in combat. Most disturbing were the stories about human warfare. Humans had fought each other for thousands of years before reaching the stars. They had weapons that could crack planets. They had strategies that seemed insane but somehow worked. They never surrendered, even when defeat was certain. They are dangerous, one delegate said. They are unstable, said another. They are reckless and aggressive, added a third. Kang Day finally stood. The chamber fell silent. He was not a large man by human standards, perhaps average height and build, but something about his presence commanded attention. He wore the simple dark uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. His face showed no emotion. You debate whether to ask for our help, Day said calmly. That is your right. But let me be clear about something. Earth does not seek conflict. We did not come to the stars to conquer. We came to explore, to learn, and to find our place among you. But you are warriors, Velthus said. It was not an accusation, just a statement of fact. We are survivors, Day corrected. There is a difference. Yes, we know how to fight. Our world taught us that. But we also know the value of life. Every human alive today exists because our ancestors refused to give up, refused to let their families die, refused to let darkness win. He walked to the center of the chamber, standing beside Velthus. You fear us because you have never had to become what we are. Your worlds are peaceful. Your evolution was gentle. You developed intelligence and cooperation because your planets allowed it. Earth gave us no such luxury. The chamber was completely silent now. Every species present was listening. But here is what you do not understand about humans, Day continued. Yes, we can be fierce. Yes, we can be relentless. But we also believe in something you might find strange. We believe that strength exists to protect the weak. We believe that those who can fight have a duty to fight for those who cannot. Pretty words, the Quilnari ambassador said softly. But the Ravagers are not like anything you have faced. Day turned to face her. You are wrong. We have faced worse. We faced ourselves. For thousands of years, humans were our own worst enemy. We built weapons to kill each other. We fought wars that devastated our world. We created horrors that still haunt our history. But we learned, we grew. We changed. He looked around the chamber at each delegate. The Ravagers are monsters. I do not doubt that. But monsters can be stopped. Monsters can be beaten. It just takes people willing to stand against them. Velthus clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. If Earth agrees to help, what would you require in return? Nothing, Day said simply. The chamber erupted again. Species did not help each other for free. There was always a price, always a negotiation. But Day held up his hand. I cannot speak for my government, he said. That decision belongs to them. But I can tell you what I believe they will say. They will say that when someone calls for help, you answer. Not because you gain something, but because it is right. Velthus studied the human for a long moment. Then he made a decision. Ambassador Day. The Galactic Council formally requests Earth's military assistance against the Ravager threat. Will you convey this message to your homeworld? Day nodded. I will send the message immediately. But I must warn you of something. What is that? You asked for warriors. You will get something different. You will get humans who have faced death every day of their lives simply by existing on their world. You will get people who do not know how to quit. You will get soldiers who will stand between you and the darkness no matter the cost. He paused, his expression still calm but his eyes intense. And you will get them fast. When humans hear that someone needs help, we do not debate. We do not hesitate. We move. Velthus felt a chill run through his body. He had asked for Earth's help because he was desperate. Now he wondered if he had unleashed something even more dangerous than the Ravagers. But it was too late to turn back. The message was being sent. And somewhere in the Sol system, Earth was receiving the call. The Deathworlders would answer. They always did. Day walked back to his seat, his mind already working. He knew his people. He knew their history. And he knew what was coming. The galaxy was about to learn what humans really were. Not monsters, not conquerors, but something perhaps more terrifying to those who had never known hardship. They were survivors who refused to let others suffer alone. And they were coming. Admiral Park Hyun stood in the command center of Earth's orbital defense station, reading the message for the third time. The distress call from the Galactic Council glowed on his display screen. Behind him, dozens of officers worked at their stations, coordinating the defense network that protected humanity's home system. How long ago did this arrive? Park asked. 2 hours, sir, replied his aide. We've been analyzing the data they sent about the Ravagers. Park nodded slowly. He was a tall man with gray streaking his dark hair. He had served in Earth's military for 35 years, rising through the ranks during the Proxima Wars and the Titan Rebellion. He had seen combat. He had lost friends. He knew the cost of war. Send a priority alert to all fleet commanders, Park said. Full mobilization. I want every available ship ready to deploy within 72 hours. His aide hesitated. Sir, the Council hasn't formally accepted our help yet. Some species are still debating whether to trust us. They called for aid, Park said flatly. That's enough. We don't wait for permission to do what's right. Within minutes, the message went out across the Sol system and to every human colony. Military bases activated. Shipyards began emergency protocols. Crews reported to their vessels. The machinery of Earth's defense forces began to move. Captain Lee Ara received the alert while her carrier was docked at the Mars orbital station. The Sol's Hammer was one of humanity's newest vessels, a massive ship that could carry 200 fighters and bombers. Ara had commanded her for 3 years and knew every system, every corridor, every member of her crew. All hands, this is the captain, she announced over the ship's communication system. We have received a distress call from the Galactic Council. Multiple alien species are under attack and facing extinction. We are being mobilized to provide assistance. All crew report to stations. Prepare for immediate departure. Ara walked through the carrier's corridors, watching her people prepare. They moved with practiced efficiency, securing equipment, running system checks, and loading supplies. These were men and women who had trained for years. They were ready. In the hangar bay, pilots were already climbing into their fighters. Ara stopped to watch them. So young, she thought. Many of them had never seen real combat. They had trained in simulations, practiced maneuvers, and studied tactics. But this would be different. This would be real. Captain, one of the pilots called out. Is it true? We're going to fight the Ravagers? Yes, Ara said. Good, the pilot replied with a grin. Let's show these aliens what humans can do. Ara smiled despite herself. That confidence, that eagerness, it was so human, Other species might hesitate, might fear, might debate. Humans saw someone in trouble and wanted to help. It was both their greatest strength and their greatest weakness. Across the system, similar scenes were playing out. Major Choi Tae assembled his ground forces on Luna. These were the elite troops, trained for combat in the harshest environments. They wore powered armor that could operate in any atmosphere, or no atmosphere at all. They carried weapons designed by humans for humans, tested in battles across the colonies. "Listen up," Tae told his troops. "We don't know much about these Ravagers yet. But we know they've been killing civilians. They've been destroying worlds, and they need to be stopped." One of his sergeants, a woman named Bei Su, raised her hand. "Sir, why are we helping aliens who fear us?" Tae looked at her steadily. "Because they need help. That's all that matters. We don't fight for glory. We don't fight for gratitude. We fight because someone has to, and we can." Bei Su nodded. "Yes, sir." At Earth's primary research facility, Dr. Shin Mina was already studying the data about the Ravagers. She was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien life forms. The information from the Galactic Council was limited, but she could piece together patterns. "They're biological," she muttered to herself, scrolling through images and reports. "Carbon-based, similar respiration to most species. That means they have weaknesses." Her assistant looked over her shoulder. "What kind of weaknesses?" "They communicate somehow," Mina said. "Coordinated attacks require communication. If we can disrupt it, we can blind them, make them vulnerable." She began running simulations, testing theories. Humans had fought many enemies over the centuries. They had learned that every living thing had a weakness. You just had to find it and exploit it. Engineer Nam Jin worked in the retrofit facilities orbiting Earth. His job was to modify ships for specific missions. When the alert came, he immediately began calculations. "We need to upgrade the weapon systems," he told his team. "The standard configuration might not be enough against an enemy we've never faced." "What do you suggest?" one of his engineers asked. "More firepower," Jin said. "Stronger shields, better armor, and backup systems for the backup systems. These ships need to keep fighting even when they should be dead." It was a very human approach to engineering. Build it tough, build it to last. Build it to take damage and keep working. Throughout the Sol system, the response continued. Military vessels prepared for deployment. Support ships loaded supplies. Medical teams packed emergency equipment. Even civilian merchant vessels volunteered to join the fleet as supply carriers. Admiral Park coordinated everything from his command center. Reports flooded in from every sector. Within 24 hours, 200 ships were ready. Within 48 hours, 500. By the end of the third day, 847 vessels were assembled in formation near Jupiter. It was the largest human fleet ever brought together. Carriers, battleships, destroyers, frigates, cruisers, support vessels, and transports, crews numbering in the hundreds of thousands, all ready to travel across the galaxy to help species they had never met. Park stood before a communication screen, broadcasting to every ship in the fleet. His face was calm, but his voice carried weight. "I know what you're all thinking," he said. "We're traveling thousands of light years to fight for aliens who fear us. Some of you wonder if it's worth it. Some of you wonder if they deserve our help." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I'm going to tell you something about humanity," Park continued. "We are the children of a world that tried to kill us every single day. We survived ice ages, plagues, predators, and our own stupidity. We learned to stand together because alone we died. We learned to protect the weak because we were all weak once. We learned that survival means more than just staying alive. It means making sure others survive too." The fleet listened in silence. "These aliens need our help," Park said. "They're facing an enemy they can't defeat alone. They're watching their worlds burn. Their people die, and they called out for someone, anyone, to stand with them. Well, here's what I know about humans. When someone calls for help, we answer. Not because we're heroes. Not because we're saints. But because we know what it's like to face darkness alone. And we refuse to let others suffer what we suffered." He straightened, his expression firm. "So we're going to cross this galaxy. We're going to find these Ravagers. And we're going to teach them something they've clearly never learned. That humanity doesn't abandon those in need. Ever." The fleet responded with a roar of approval that echoed across communication channels. "All ships," Park commanded. "Prepare for jump. Destination the Quilnari system. Maximum speed, sir," his aide said quietly. "Maximum speed means taking the route through the Vortan Nebula. It's extremely dangerous. Park looked at him with steel in his eyes. They're dying out there. We take the fast route, the fleet acknowledged. Engines powered up. Jump drives charged. And 847 human vessels prepared to cross the galaxy in record time. The Deathworlders were coming. And they were not coming slowly. The Vortan Nebula stretched across space like a wound in reality. Clouds of ionized gas glowed in colors that hurt to look at. Magnetic storms raged through the region, powerful enough to tear apart any ship foolish enough to enter. Gravity wells appeared and disappeared without warning. Radiation levels would kill most organic life within minutes. No sane species traveled through the Vortan Nebula. The accepted route around it added 6 days to the journey. 6 days that the Quilnari did not have. Navigator Kang Hana sat at her station aboard the flagship Terra's Wrath, studying the nebula on her displays. She had plotted a course through its heart, calculating vectors and timings with obsessive precision. It would save those 6 days. It might also kill them all. Are you certain about this? Admiral Park asked from behind her. Hana did not turn around. Her fingers danced across the controls, refining her calculations. No, sir. But I'm as certain as I can be. Park appreciated the honesty. Good enough. Transmit the course to the fleet. The human armada entered the nebula in tight formation. Immediately, their sensors went haywire. The magnetic interference was worse than expected. Ship systems flickered and struggled to compensate. Warning alarms blared across every bridge. Shields at maximum. Captain Liara commanded aboard the Soul's Hammer. Her carrier shuddered as waves of radiation hammered against it. All personnel to secure stations. The carrier's hangar bay was sealed tight. Fighters and bombers were locked in their bays, magnetic clamps holding them in place. The pilots waited in their ready rooms, feeling the ship shake around them. This is insane, one pilot muttered. This is Tuesday. Another replied with a nervous laugh. Deeper into the nebula, the conditions worsened. A gravity well appeared directly in the fleet's path. Ships had only seconds to adjust course. The destroyer Vigilant was too slow. The gravity caught it and began pulling the ship off course. Emergency thrust, the Vigilant's captain ordered. Full power. The destroyer's engines screamed, fighting against forces that should have been impossible to resist. For a terrible moment, it seemed the ship would be torn apart. Then the engines found purchase and the Vigilant clawed its way free. The crew cheered, then immediately returned to their stations. They were not out of the nebula yet. Captain Yoon Sung commanded the stealth destroyer Shadow of Earth at the fleet's vanguard. His ship was smaller, faster, and built for reconnaissance. He pushed ahead of the main fleet, scanning for dangers. Contact ahead, his sensor officer reported. Large object, origin unknown. Yoon leaned forward in his command chair. Can you identify it? Negative, sir. Too much interference. But it's big. Take us closer. Slowly. The Shadow of Earth crept forward through the nebula's chaos. As they approached, the object resolved on their sensors. It was a ship, or had been once. Ancient and dead, drifting through the nebula for who knew how long. Its hull was scarred by radiation and time. A graveyard, Yoon said quietly. Mark its location and transmit to the fleet. They need to avoid it. Sir, should we investigate? No time. Keep moving. Back in the main fleet, Admiral Park monitored the progress of every ship. They were making good time, better than expected. But the cost was showing. Several vessels had sustained damage from the radiation. Shields were holding, but barely. He had to make a choice. All ships, this is Admiral Park, reduce speed by 10%. Redirect power to shields and life support. We need to get through this alive. The fleet adjusted. The journey would take slightly longer, but their chances of survival increased. It was a calculated risk, one that Park made with the cold logic that came from decades of command. On the medical ship Mercy, Dr. Shin Mina was not thinking about the journey. She was still studying the Ravagers. The data from the Galactic Council showed their attack patterns, their biology, their behavior. She was searching for a weakness. They move in swarms, she said to her research team. Coordinated, precise. That requires communication. Chemical signals, one researcher suggested. Pheromones? Possibly, Mina said. Most biological swarm species use chemical communication. If we can synthesize a counteragent, we can disrupt their coordination. She began running simulations testing different chemical compounds. It was a race against time. They would reach the Quilnari system soon, and she wanted to give the fleet every advantage. As the hours passed, the human armada pushed deeper into the nebula. Ships that should have failed continued functioning through sheer redundancy. Human engineering favored backup systems and robust design. When primary systems failed, secondary systems took over. When those failed, tertiary systems activated. The ships kept moving. In the troop transport Rising Storm, Major Choi Tae gathered his squad leaders for a briefing. They stood in the ready room, wearing their combat armor minus the helmets. These were hardened veterans, men and women who had seen combat before. "We don't know what we're walking into," Tae told them. "The Quilnari homeworld is under siege. Orbital defenses are down. Ravagers have ground forces on the surface. Our job is to get down there and hold until the civilians can be evacuated." Sergeant Baesu frowned. "Sir, how many Ravagers are we talking about?" "Best estimates put their ground forces at several million," Tae said calmly. The room was silent for a moment. Then one of the sergeants laughed. "Well, at least we'll have targets," the others joined in. It was dark humor, the kind that soldiers used to deal with fear. Tae let them have their moment. They would need that dark humor soon enough. 40 hours into the journey, the fleet emerged from the nebula. Ships limped out of the swirling chaos, battered but intact. Every vessel reported in. They had made it through with only minor damage. By any reasonable standard, it should have been impossible. But humans did not concern themselves with reasonable standards. "All ships, status report," Admiral Park commanded. The reports came in one by one. Minor hull damage. Radiation exposure within acceptable limits. Shield generators stressed but functional. Weapon systems operational. Crew tired but ready. "We're 20 hours from the Quilnari system," the navigation officer reported. "Still ahead of schedule." Park allowed himself a small smile. "Inform the fleet. Rest while you can. When we arrive, there will be no time for rest." Captain Yoon Sung's Shadow of Earth accelerated ahead of the fleet, racing toward the Quilnari system. His mission was to gather intelligence before the main force arrived. He needed to see what they were facing. 4 hours later, the Shadow of Earth dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Quilnari system. What Yoon saw in his sensors made his blood run cold. The Quilnari homeworld was burning. Its orbital stations were shattered wreckage. Ravager ships filled the space around the planet like locusts. Hundreds of vessels, from small fighters to massive capital ships. They were bombarding the surface, landing troops, harvesting everything they could. "Get me a count," Yoon ordered. His sensor officer worked quickly. 412 Ravager warships, sir. Thousands of smaller craft. Unknown number of ground forces. Yoon studied the tactical display. The Quilnari had tried to defend themselves. Debris from their defense fleet floated among the Ravager ships. They had fought bravely, but bravery alone was not enough. "Scan for survivors," Yoon said. "Multiple refugee centers on the surface," the officer reported. "Population centers are holding defensive perimeters, but they're being overrun." "I'm reading. Sir, there are millions of Quilnari still alive down there. Send all data to Admiral Park," Yoon commanded. "We've found them, and they're running out of time." The Shadow of Earth retreated to a safe distance and waited. Behind them, the human armada was coming. 847 ships racing to the rescue. Admiral Park received the reconnaissance data and immediately called a fleet-wide conference. Holographic displays showed every ship commander what they were facing. The numbers were overwhelming. The Ravagers outnumbered them significantly. "Recommendations?" Park asked his officers. "Standard doctrine would be to wait for reinforcements," one admiral suggested. "We don't have time," Captain Lee Ara said. "Those civilians are dying right now." "Agreed," Major Tae said. "We go in now or we go in to find corpses." Park looked at the tactical display, calculating odds and options. In any normal military engagement, this would be suicide. The Ravagers had superior numbers, defensive positions, and momentum, but the human fleet had something else. They had a world that had taught them to win when winning should be impossible. They had a history of turning defeats into victories through sheer stubbornness. They had the willingness to do whatever it took. "All ships battle stations," Park commanded. "We attack in 1 hour. Formation Delta 7. Concentrated assault on their command ships. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and don't stop until they're all dead or running." Across the fleet, crews prepared for battle. Weapons were armed. Shields brought to full power. Pilots climbed into their fighters. Marines checked their gear one final time. The human armada formed up, 847 ships in perfect attack formation. Ahead of them, the Quilnari system waited. A world under siege. People dying. and monsters who thought they had already won. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of Terra's Wrath watching the countdown timer. 60 seconds, 45, 30. To all ships, he said quietly. Remember why we're here? Remember who we're fighting for. The Battle of Quilnar began with fire and fury. The human fleet dropped into the system already shooting, weapons blazing at full power. Missiles streaked across the darkness. Energy beams cut through space. Railguns launched projectiles at impossible speeds. The Ravagers had only seconds to react. Their ships scrambled to defensive positions, but the human attack was unlike anything they had encountered. Most species fought at long range, carefully maneuvering, conserving resources. Humans did the opposite. All ships, close to engagement range, Admiral Park commanded. I want us so close we can see their faces. The human fleet surged forward. Ravager ships fired back, their weapons tearing into the leading vessels. The frigate Dawn's Light took a direct hit to its forward shields. The shields collapsed. Another hit tore through the hull. Dawn's Light is venting atmosphere, a voice reported on the command channel. Dawn's Light, can you maintain position? Park asked. Affirmative, Admiral. The frigate's captain replied, his voice strained. We're still in the fight. Good man. Hold the line. The Dawn's Light continued fighting, its crew working frantically to seal the breach and keep their weapons firing. It was a human trait that confused and terrified other species. They did not retreat when wounded. They fought harder. Captain Lee Ara's carrier Soul's Hammer launched its full complement of fighters and bombers. 200 small craft poured from the hangar bays, forming into attack squadrons. The pilots were young and eager, ready to prove themselves. All fighters engage at will, Ara commanded. Protect the capital ships and hit their supply lines. The fighters screamed into battle. They were outnumbered 3-1 by Ravager craft, but human pilots had advantages. They could tolerate higher G-forces, make sharper turns, and push their craft beyond recommended limits. What would kill other species, humans could survive. A pilot named Kim executed a maneuver that should have knocked him unconscious. His fighter spun violently, dodging incoming fire, then immediately reversed and fired on his pursuer. The Ravager craft exploded. Splash 1, Kim reported calmly, already lining up his next target. In the center of the battle, 3 human frigates broke from the formation. They accelerated toward the largest Ravager capital ship, a massive vessel that was coordinating the enemy fleet. What are they doing? An officer asked Admiral Park. What needs to be done? Park replied quietly. The 3 frigates ignored all enemy fire, taking hit after hit. Their shields failed. Their armor burned. But they did not stop. They crashed into the Ravager capital ship at full speed. The explosion was visible across the entire battlefield. The Ravager ship broke apart, its command structure destroyed. The 3 frigates were gone, their crews dead. But they had accomplished their mission. Mark their sacrifice, Park said softly. Then louder, all ships exploit the gap. Push through their line. The human fleet surged forward into the confusion. Ravager ships tried to reform their defensive positions, but the humans were already among them. At close range, the battle became brutal and chaotic. Captain Yoon Sung's Shadow of Earth moved through the battle like a ghost. His stealth destroyer targeted Ravager communication relays, destroying them one by one. Without coordination, the Ravager fleet began to struggle. Their command structure is breaking down, Yoon reported. They're losing cohesion. Excellent work, Shadow, Park replied. Continue your mission. On the medical ship Mercy, Dr. Shin Mina had completed her work. She had synthesized a chemical compound that would disrupt Ravager pheromone communication. Now she needed to deploy it. Admiral, this is Dr. Mina, she transmitted. I have a weapon ready. I need fighters to deliver it to the planet's atmosphere. Approved, Park said. Captain Ara, provide escort for the delivery craft. Lee Ara assigned 2 full squadrons to protect the delivery ships. They fought their way through the orbital battle, clearing a path. The delivery craft entered the atmosphere and released the chemical compound. It spread through the air, invisible but effective. On the ground, the Ravager forces suddenly became confused. Their perfect coordination broke down. They began making mistakes, attacking randomly instead of strategically. It was the opening the defenders needed. Major Choi Tae's dropships entered the atmosphere in the middle of the chemical deployment. They were massive troop transports carrying 2,000 Marines in powered armor. The ships took fire from ground-based weapons, but their armor held. Prepare for combat landing, Tae announced to his forces. Secure the refugee centers. Protect the civilians. No Ravager leaves alive. The dropships landed in the middle of a war zone. Their ramps dropped and human Marines poured out. They moved with practiced efficiency, establishing defensive perimeters and identifying targets. Sergeant Bei Su led her squad toward the nearest refugee center. It was under heavy attack. Thousands of Quilnari civilians huddled inside while Ravagers tried to break through the defenses. The Quilnari defenders were out of ammunition and fighting with whatever they could find. "Contact front," one of Su's Marines called out. A wave of Ravagers charged at them. There were hundreds, maybe thousands. They were large creatures built for killing, with armored hides and razor-sharp claws. They moved fast and hit hard. "Open fire," Su commanded. The Marines' weapons roared. Railguns fired penetrating rounds. Plasma weapons burned through Ravager armor. Grenades exploded in the midst of the charging horde. But still they came. "They're not stopping," a Marine shouted. "Neither are we," Su replied. "Hold this position." The Ravagers hit the Marine line like a tsunami. It became close-quarters combat, brutal and desperate. The Marines fought with weapons, with their armored fists, with anything they could use. One Marine ran out of ammunition and used his weapon as a club. Another lost an arm to a Ravager claw and kept fighting with the other. Su found herself face-to-face with a massive Ravager, easily 3 times her size. It swung at her with claws that could tear through steel. She dodged barely, and fired her weapon point-blank into its chest. It fell. Another took its place. Then another. The Marines were being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. But they did not break. They did not run. They stood their ground because civilians depended on them. "Reinforcements inbound," Tay's voice came over the communication channel. "Hold for 30 seconds. 30 seconds might as well have been 30 hours. Su's squad was down to half strength. The survivors were wounded and exhausted, but they held. Then the sky lit up with fire. Orbital strikes from the fleet above hammered the Ravager positions. The ground shook with impacts. The enemy line shattered under the bombardment. More dropships landed, deploying fresh troops. The Marines pushed forward, driving the Ravagers back from the refugee center. Within minutes, the immediate threat was eliminated. Su stood among the bodies of dead Ravagers, breathing hard. Her armor was dented and scorched. Blood covered her visor, though she was not sure if it was hers or the enemy's. "Refugee center secure," she reported. "Civilian casualties unknown." Inside the refugee center, Quilnari civilians slowly emerged from their hiding places. They looked at the human Marines with a mixture of fear and awe. These warriors had appeared from nowhere and saved them from certain death. A Quilnari child, no more than 5 years old in human terms, approached Su. The child looked up at her armored form and spoke in broken human language. "Why you come?" Su removed her helmet. Her face was covered in sweat and dirt. She knelt down to the child's level. "Because you needed help," she said simply. Above the planet, the space battle reached its turning point. The human fleet had lost 23 ships with thousands dead or wounded. But the Ravagers had lost far more. Their formation was broken. Their command structure was destroyed. Their coordination was disrupted. Admiral Park saw the moment when the Ravagers realized they were losing. Some species would surrender at that point. Some would negotiate. The Ravagers tried to retreat. "Do not let them escape," Park commanded. "Any ship that tries to leave this system is to be destroyed. No mercy for those who showed none." The human fleet pursued the fleeing Ravagers without hesitation. Ship after ship was caught and destroyed. Fighters hunted down the smaller craft. The battle became a massacre, but it was a necessary one. These creatures would only go on to attack someone else. Captain Lee Ara watched from her carrier as the last major Ravager vessel was destroyed. Her fighters returned to the hangar bays, many of them damaged, some not returning at all. She had lost pilots today. Good people, but they had won. "Admiral, the orbital space is secure," she reported. "All Ravager ships are destroyed or fleeing." "Acknowledged, Captain," Park replied. "Well done." On the ground, Major Tay's forces had secured all major refugee centers. The remaining Ravagers were being hunted down systematically. It would take days to clear the planet completely, but the immediate threat was over. Ground forces reporting victory. Tay transmitted to the fleet. "The planet is saved." Admiral Park allowed himself a moment of relief. They had done it. Against overwhelming odds, outnumbered and far from home, the human fleet had won. The cost had been high, but the victory was complete. "All ships, this is Admiral Park," he broadcast to the fleet. "Well done. Each and every one of you performed with honor and courage. 23 ships were lost. 4,000 personnel gave their lives. We will remember them. But know this.